The Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
The disciple John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward. If any of you put a stumbling block before the one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than to have 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell, where their worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
You may be seated. Jesus' words are hard, and they really drive a wedge. And at this time in our life, at this stage in our country, in a divided culture like we are at, I just saw the news, or just saw a TV show yesterday that talked about fake news and the divided culture. And it brought to mind a divided culture that I've struggled with all my life. And I need to ask you about it today. If it came to it, who do you think would win, the Hulk or Superman? I know, you're looking at me like, what? You don't think that's a serious question? Honestly, if you go amongst comic book circles, that can cause a fight. If you go into a comic book store and you start asking such questions, you might be asked to leave, because there are people in those circles who take their comic book characters, their favorite characters, seriously enough that they will battle over their fictional character that is their favorite. Maybe you don't care about such things. How about this? How many of you have a favorite sports team? Lots of you, I know. Now think about your favorite sports team and the fans that they have. Fans are amazing people, aren't they? And think about the other fans that are like you. What kind of people are they? What kind of people are the fans that root for your team? What kind of people are they?
Good people.
They're good people. They're good folks. They're good, hard-working folks. Now, think about the people who root for your rivals. What kind of people are they? Scoundrels. See, we do this. We do this all the time. Not so long ago in Riceville, Iowa, there was a teacher. She did a little experiment with her class. Her class, who many of them who had gone to school together their entire lives since kindergarten, came in. And I can't remember, I think they were 3rd or 4th graders by this time, so they knew each other rather well. And she taught her class that day that she had just read a new research study that said that kids who had blue eyes were special. that they were smarter and stronger and faster and better than kids who had dark eyes, who had brown eyes. And so therefore, for the rest of the day, kids who had blue eyes in her class would have special treatment. And so therefore, she went the rest of the morning, and kids who had blue eyes, they had special treatment. Then they went to lunch. And when they came back from lunch, she said, "Oh my goodness, children, I forgot. I misread the research. It's actually children with brown eyes who have better skills, who are special." So the rest of the day, children with brown eyes had the special treatment. How do you think that turned out? You think these kids who knew each other all their lives treated each other the same way? No. These kids who had known each other all their lives, in the matter of minutes in some cases, were calling each other these wonderfully creative names like brown eyes. Brown eyes, I mean, that's a name? We do this all the time. For some reason, we try and build ourselves up by putting others down. The disciples are going along with Jesus, and they see a man casting out demons. Something some of them struggled with, by the way. And they try and stop him. Why? Was it because he wasn't following Jesus? Is that what the text tells us? No. The text tells us that they went to Jesus and they say, "We tried to stop him because he wasn't following us." The disciples right before this had been arguing about who among them was the greatest, who was going to come after Jesus and be the next leader. And so when they come along with this guy here, and he's this single strand, and they're the twine, they're the many, and he's the one. He's not doing it their way. And they want him to stop. And they go and they say, "Jesus, we tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen to us. You go. You stop him." And I almost see, I'm not sure how many of you watch NCIS, but I've watched it most of its seasons. I almost see Jesus, as Mark Harmon here, walk up behind him and on the back of the head. Don't stop him. He's doing good. He's helping people. He's building people up. He's lifting them up out of the mud and the muck. Don't you stop them, because they need to be lifted up. And we need to hear this too, because in our culture right now, it is very divided. And again, we are hearing people calling each other names, all sorts of labels. And what happens when we do this is we start pointing fingers, and the good that gets done stops getting done. Because we're so busy pulling apart the twine and trying to define who we are or aren't, and who's in and who's out. In a world of yearning and brokenness, folks, the church needs to be clear about our mission. And our mission isn't to divide and pull apart, but to reconcile. We've been given the very ministry that started up there, to draw all people in, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their skin color, regardless of what label they wear, or regardless of what label we want to put on them. To draw all people in through this thing called grace. A label that even we have trouble identifying and defining anymore. But ultimately what it means is God's undeserved, overflowing love for all of us. And one of the greatest images of grace comes from the Sabbath day ritual that the Jews have done for centuries. At the end of the Sabbath, they take this cup, and on the bottom of this cup comes this saucer. And they sing this wonderful song about God's blessing. And they pour in wine. And as they sing the song, the wine pours into the cup that defines or signifies themselves, similar to our goblet. And it signifies being filled themselves with God's blessing. But then they continue to sing. And the cup fills, and it overflows. You see, folks, we are a people whose lives are broken apart and degraded by sin. And this, it focuses and it comes into our life in many ways. And it focuses and it comes into our life through loneliness and false values and emptiness and through separation. Many in our lives are abused or abusing. Humanity is broken apart and threatened by this sin. And it erupts in division, greed, and violence. And how does God respond? By pouring into us again and again, over and over, God's blessings. And asking us to one moment of love at a time to build the kingdom. Because in this blessing ritual, the Jews have sung for centuries, the cup overflows with God's blessing. And it fills the saucer beneath to signify how when we are filled with the blessings of God, the grace, we bless others around us as we overflow with that grace. You see, in the midst of isolation, lovelessness, self-absorption, and sin, we are still called, one moment of love at a time, to touch each other. To touch each other with grace that is undeserved and overflowing from within us, and to share it. To share it with our spouse, to share it with our children, to share it with that stranger that needs to know that they are loved even though they don't deserve it. To share it with that person behind us in the waiting line who tells us at the bank, yeah, my dad just went into the hospital and I don't know if he's going to live. One moment of love at a time. We are the kingdom to people. You see, God cares how we use this grace. And as you experience grace in this place, you are being invited today to be grace to each other. We practice it every Sunday. Do you realize that? We pass the peace of Christ. That's not just some greeting we do. That is practicing. That is pretending the kingdom so that you can start here what we want you to be out there. Every day of your life, you are called, one loving moment at a time, to be one string in the strand of God's twine that's building up the strong grace of God's kingdom. This is your calling. This is who you are because of whose you are. Would you please stand as you are able and let us sing God's word.